Coach, first off, welcome back, I guess, to South Carolina high school coaching. That's got to be pretty exciting, first off.
Yeah, it is. It is. I spent a year coaching in college, and I definitely missed a lot of aspects of the high school coaching. You see a lot more growth in the high school kids. Sometimes they're a little bit, we'll say, sillier to be around, but it's exciting being around the younger kids again.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. You know, first off, just like reaching out to you, I appreciate you coming on. Uh, you know, recently, like having this podcast and being able to talk to a lot of student athletes and bring on coaches as well has really been, I think, eye opening. Not just for me, but even just for others to be able to hear a little bit more more in depth of what's going around the state. But yeah, just first off, man, I'm curious. I think people are curious because you're taking over a program that is uh it's renowned, man. It's up there. Obviously, we're gonna get into a lot of that, but just curious, like first off, just like how'd you get involved in running in the first place?
Yeah, so definitely exciting. Big shoes to fill, I guess, at Riverside. A lot of things to be excited about. I started running back in elementary school. I guess it was probably like fourth grade. My dad had ran in high school, and then uh, he'd done like factory work for a while, but then he went back to school and got his degree to start teaching. So he was teaching fourth grade the year I was in fourth grade, and all of a sudden he had all this extra time on his hands. And was like, I want to hang out with my kid. So he got me into running. So that was something that we definitely like bonded over when I was growing up. And then I was like a lot of cross country kids, I was too small and too uncoordinated to play any of the ball sports. But I found that with cross country, the thing that I could do better than anybody else around me was I could just tough it out and put in a lot of work into the sport. And that's what I've always loved about it is the true like meritocracy of it. It is talent obviously helps, but by and large, it's who's putting in the most work and most consistently. Those are the kids that end up being good. So I ran in rural single A South Georgia, but I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to run Division One at Mercer University. Um, for those unfamiliar in South Carolina, they're in the same conference as Furman and Wofford and the Citadel. Um, and then moved on to teaching after I graduated, which was not something that I originally planned to do. But I kind of found my way into it. Everybody in my family are teachers, so it was kind of a family business, so to say. And I found my way back into it as a way to stay involved with the sport. I spent about a couple years not running really very much, and I missed it a lot. So I'm really fortunate to find my way back into it.
Yeah, I think that's always really interesting. Like in some way, we it seems like most runners they kind of do have like those ups and downs. Even just like in your running career, you always have those ups and downs where it's just like you're on a high point, you love it, and then you may not run a PR for a while, and it gets kind of low, and you're just like thinking about quitting. Um, and then you do kind of take that step away, but you seem to always kind of come back to it just because the sport we love so much. Um, so I wanted to ask you because you had you were an assistant coach at Mercer for a while. Um, how was that? How much did you kind of take from that into what you're doing now at Riverside?
It was an interesting experience. you know, Being a head coach at Hillcrest, where I pretty much, at least during cross country season, I ran the show, and in track season, I more or less had say over the distance group most of the time. But from going from that role to stepping back and being an assistant, it was super valuable for me. At Other than I spent one cross country season as a volunteer assistant jail man under Coach Glenn McAtee, and that was awesome. But then after that, other than that, the 4 years on Hillcrest, everything I was coaching was basically self-taught. Picking up pieces of what worked for me in high school, what worked for me, and worked for my teammates in college. Um, but I really valued the time getting to go learn from somebody else who had been doing the job longer and at a high level. The coach that I worked under at Mercer, Coach Roop. We actually both were new coaches at the time, new to Mercer at the same time, which was exciting because we both came in like 2 weeks before classes started and had to figure out everything on the fly, basically, with these kids. But I mean, he's one of the best in the game. He's coached national championship qualifiers, All Americans at the Division 1 level. Um, and I think the most valuable thing that I learned from him coaching was kind of give me a little more freedom to really get the most out of the kids. It's different between the high school and college level. Like those kids are, obviously we care about their degree. We want them to have a good life experience at college. But at the end of the day, they are, especially the way college sports is going now, they are almost professionals. They're there to run, and if they weren't running, they probably wouldn't be at that university. Whereas high schools, you definitely have to. There's a broader range of like there are some kids that are just out there to hang out with their friends. So that's an adjustment for sure. Um, but from him, I learned a lot more to kind of just be a little more aggressive with kids that need it, particularly on the girl side. When I was at Hillcrest, I had a good bit of success with my guys, but the girls, I felt like I never really pushed them as hard as maybe I should have, and I didn't realize that until after the fact. I think a lot of, especially younger male coaches, they are almost kind of scared to coach girls harder, but in reality, you've got to respect them and treat them the same way you would the guys. I mean, they're just as talented of athletes. They're working just as hard if you push them to. So that was a big thing for me that I learned from him that I'm really excited to employ at Riverside.
Yeah, I always find it really beneficial and really humbling when you can kind of take a step back and learn from somebody. I was in the army for 10 years, and there were times where it's like yeah, we could be the same rank, but it's like, hey, this person is in a position that's higher than me. It's like, you know what? Let me take a step back. Let me learn from them. Let me gather everything. So then when it is my time, like you are right now, it's your show and you're prepared. When you talk about like obviously what you've learned at Hillcrest and what you've learned at Mercer, um, and now coming into Riverside, and like we talked about already briefly, it's a program. It's an established program. It's not like you got to start from bare bones nothing. Um, but there's obviously, you go into a program like that and you got to have some ideas of like kind of your philosophy of how you want, Riverside to kind of succeed the next, 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the road. What are some of those like philosophies that you kind of want to bring, like right to the table right now and kind of create that culture at Riverside?
Yeah, it's definitely a really interesting situation. At Hillcrest, I had awesome kids, but I didn't have very many of them. The distance group there just historically has never been very big. So it's a challenge, but it's exciting having. I mean, I've got double the kids at the summer practice I had now than I had in season at Hillcrest, which is stressful to manage at times. But it's good to have a fuller cupboard, so to speak. But on the flip side, yes, it is this historically, vaunted program that was nationally relevant at times. Uh, but in recent years, Coach Long, awesome person. I can tell from the conversation I had with her that she really loved the team. She poured a lot into it. Um, but for, I think it was personal reasons, she didn't really coach during track season. And I think what a lot of these kids are missing is that full year round involvement with the sport. So, I'm trying to impress that upon them already now. It's like, hey, this is not just like something we do for 3, 4 months of the year. If we want to be great, we've got to do this all year round. So that's definitely one piece. Um, there's a lot of room to grow still because the team has kind of been hiding, maybe is a bad way to put it, but kind of hiding behind a couple really good individuals like Ty Jones, like Mai Johnson. Um, and you go to the state championship and you have one of your runners scores 1 point, that gives you a lot more breathing room. Whereas this year, it's going to be a rebuilding year in some ways. I think, we've got some depth pieces, but I don't see us having a true like low stick this year that's going to go score 1, 2, 3 points at state. So it's very much one of the philosophies I'm trying to impress upon them early on is that this is a full team effort. This is always bigger than the individual. Like for example, yesterday at our summer practice, I'm having to do the strength circuit, and like I have a rule when we're doing planks, if anybody goes down, the whole team starts over on the planks. I never call names, I don't point fingers, but I say, hey, somebody slipped up, the whole team has to do it. And I asked them, I said, why do you guys think I do this? And the reason that I'm looking for is, a lot of them, they recognize like if one person makes a mistake, they're letting down the whole team. And that is important to get across to kids. But what I was really looking for from them and trying to impress upon them is that I don't believe there's any such thing as just one person's mistake. If somebody on the team slips up, they cut a corner, it's everybody's responsibility, and everybody, especially the older veteran kids, they let that person down by not holding them accountable. And I mean, that's, in my opinion, that's where you elevate from, good to decent teams to great, is when all the athletes hold each other and themselves accountable. Because I mean, I'm only one guy out there. I can't have eyes on them all the time, especially when they're gone away from practice. So it's important for them to really like take ownership over that and keep each other in line.
Yeah, you touched up on something about you know the sport really is becoming year round, and I do want to touch up on that. But the importance of kind of building this team right from the get go, and kind of I always think of it as like you got to sell your idea to them. You got to get them behind it. You got to get them to want and believe in it. And I guess starting off like going into this whole thing, um, obviously like an importance of a unified team is really important, and that's really what you were saying right there. Um, do you find yourself like do you see them kind of understanding like, hey, this is where because you are the new guy, quote unquote, the new coach that comes in, like they kind of want to see how things run. Do you think that the team's kind of already bought into that kind of idea of like, this is the direction, this is kind of your coaching way, philosophy?
I think the foundation is being laid in a way. This is another weird situation I've been in before. I actually just moved to Greenville this weekend. So I've been living back in Georgia still for the past 6 weeks. So I've been having to coach these kids through email, basically. And I've been able to like pop into a practice or two on the weekend, but for the most part, I haven't been able to get like true FaceTime with them until this week, at least for an extended period of time. And I mean, it's kind of a revolving door over the summer. So many kids are on their own vacation for this or that, or there to camp, blah blah blah, which is awesome. I want people to enjoy their lives, and so far I've seen a lot of my kids are, you know, seems they're taking to heart and they're like getting their runs in no matter where they are. Like I have one girl that's in freaking Ireland right now, but I'm still seeing her get her runs in on Strava, and I love to see that because that tells me, okay, this kid is at least they're on the way to being bought in, and that's such a great example for the other kids because they go on, they've got the same Strava that I do. When they see her, they're like, well, she's on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, she's still getting her runs in, so why am I slacking? You know what I mean? Um, but yeah, so it's growing. It takes time. It's a process. I was just talking to my wife on the phone this morning, saying, I do already feel like things are ahead of schedule compared to, it's easy thinking back to like when I first started at Hillcrest. What it looked like then the first 2 weeks that I was around kids. And, you grow up, yeah, you keep moving on, rise up the ranks, and you start to. It's easy to you raise your expectations, obviously, and your standards, your goals, and it's easy to forget, that when you're starting over from scratch, basically somewhere, that it takes some time. But I think it's heading in the right direction. I definitely have uh, a good core group of kids that have been showing up to all the practices that I think are they're starting to get the message.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because I always think like a coaching change is so you don't see it too often. I mean, I guess kind of, but not really. Like, there's some coaches that stay at a program for years and years, decades even. So you kind of like just a switch at all is I don't know. Sometimes people just don't love change. But obviously it can bring some really great stuff moving forward. Um, I want to touch back on you mentioned track or really running in general has become year long. That's something we've really talked about on the podcast quite a bit. Especially like talking to coaches about it, is that like now with I think the ideal has always been like soccer, like club soccer, or like basketball, AAU basketball has always been kind of like year round, and it's running has really kind of turned into that because you have cross, and if you do an indoor season, a little bit in there, obviously outdoor. We were talking with some student athletes, and they just ended their outdoor season like 2 weeks ago with New Balance and Nike and all that jazz. What are some of your thoughts as far as like how the sport is kind of especially at the high school level, is kind of developing over into a year long kind of commitment.
Yeah. So I think is something that sets running apart from, like the ball sports is that, for them, they spend a little bit of time getting in shape, and then they spend a lot of time doing skill development, and then going into game shape and I guess those aspects of it. But for us, it's not there's not skill development in cross country. There definitely is, especially on the mental side. But really, for us, fitness is the whole point. You know what I mean? So you kind of have to maintain that, especially if you're going to be competitive in two separate seasons, which I thank my lucky stars, I guess, that we're not in a state that does indoor because I would hate to have to put a third season on kids' legs in between. I mean, indoor races are cool, don't get me wrong, but I'm happy that we can focus on, I don't have to have them in real peak race shape twice a year. I think in terms of a lot of the extras around it that I don't love seeing, is a lot of kids, the postseason races that are going this late, they're awesome. They're awesome opportunities situationally. And for the kids that really, I don't want to say you earned it or deserve to be there because that it feels exclusionary, maybe a little elitist, but like if you're a kid that is going to the 15th heat at Adidas Nationals and you're running, I mean, say you're a guy that's going to go run like 450. I was a college coach, and I know that that's not really moving the needle. A lot of kids think, oh, I'm going to go with this big race, I'm going to get exposure for like recruiting, and that's just not moving the needle. If you're one of the kids that's in like that prime heat or that even like three maybe four heats deep at like a running lane or something, absolutely totally worth it, go for it. But outside of that, most of these kids, it's cool to go get the backpack or whatever, but a lot of times all you're really doing, man, is you're just putting money in New Balance's pocket. You're just becoming a walking billboard for them. Like that's the reason they put on these races at the end of the day. To a lesser extent, some of the camps are that way as well. Like Nike camp used to be huge, and it's kind of the same thing there. It's like, oh, I got invited to be at Nike camp. It's like, yeah, they invited you to go pay like $1,200 to go be camper for a week. Which again, not to say they don't have their merit. They're a lot of fun. It is a really cool experience. Especially, I mean, like I went to Running Lane 2 years ago and with some Hillcrest kids, and that like final heat where they've got the lights off, they got the fire on the track. They're calling out kids, and maybe we're gonna see a 4 minute mile. That's cool stuff. But at the end of the day, everything has a cost to it, and for a lot of these kids, it's like, man, you just finished your season racing 2 weeks ago. Ideally, I work with like a 24-week cycle to get you ready for the state championship, which is as my job as the high school coach. That is the priority. So it's like, man, you've already cut out 6 weeks of that base phase. That now I have to figure out I've got to compress phases later in the season. There are going to be points early in the season where I might not be able to race some of my best kids because they're not going to be ready because they're just behind. So I think for the kids that are going to go actually be competitive in the top heats, it's awesome. I think for a lot of other kids, I think maybe they're getting caught up in some of the marketing of it all. To be quite frank.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because like I remember uh it almost seems like it has kind of opened up a little bit as far as like people being able to sign up. Like I know like Running Lane kind of invites everybody. I think even Adidas invites almost everybody. Like there's some of these meets and they're great. They are great and it's cool to see, but it's like you said, yeah, it pretty much is just putting money in their pockets. And it seems like every brand also kind of wants a piece of the pie,
Right.
because running lane is cool, but then it's like, well, let me just go another week and a half and I can get to New Balance, and then maybe a couple more days I can go to Nike, and it's like I don't know, for cross runners, I feel like it's just, especially cross runners, uh it's rough. It's rough, and it's kind of like, I guess, like where do you, and that's really a question I've been asking a lot of student athletes, is like where do you draw that line of like, hey, this date is like the cutoff. We gotta take a break. We gotta start training for cross country. Do you think you kind of would have an idea of like a timeline of that, like, or you kind of just take it? Would you take it like base by base, like who could possibly run that, or because I feel like you kind of have to have almost a cutoff. I mean, running in July and in track shape. I mean, I get it, but you gotta have a break. So it's like you're not really going to get any summer base training until mid July, like right now. So like, I guess yeah. Do you kind of have an idea in mind, or
I mean, it definitely has to be situational to some degree. I think age plays a big part in it. Like I touched on earlier, like the recruiting aspect of that a lot of kids think they're getting. It's like coaches a lot of times like they don't care what you ran when you were a freshman, a sophomore. I mean, we even at Mercer, we did not really recruit juniors. I mean, if they reached out to us, we would, obviously we'd have a conversation with them, but you know, like we're not going to spend our limited time on the college side, in and like spending time recruiting a kid who's a junior who we think has a lot of potential because like, hey, we're interested in when they're running uh, a girl maybe running like 520, and then say she pops off her senior year, runs, 50 something, and gets under five. Well, now all of a sudden we spend a lot of time, but we're not getting anything back from because she's going to flip to a power five. So I think juniors, I think is mostly going to be okay as long as it's not too deep in the summer. Like I think running lane's great. It's because it's not that long after the state meet. But like for like Brooks or Adidas. Adidas is kind of iffy, but like New Balance, Nike, like they're so deep into the summer that I mean, really, unless you're a senior that's going to be competitive at one of these meets, or if you're a senior, you don't even care about going to college, you just want one more opportunity, one more crack at it to get a cool PR, then absolutely go for it. But for the younger kids, especially, like I really don't want to see them racing into past mid June, honestly. And I mean, a lot of these kids aren't even like, you'll have kids that aren't qualifying for their state meet that are going to go spend a bunch of money to go again racing like the 15th heat at one of these national meets. And it's like, what'd you really get out of that? You know what I
yeah,
mean?
what are you doing? Yeah, no, and that's why I said it seems like it kind of opened up the door. Like you just see a lot of these kids, and it's like it's no disrespect to them, but yeah, like what are you doing, kind of out there running, a 5:30 mile for the guys' side? It's like it's just not really worth it too much.
Yeah, they
Um,
used to have time standards, and I think they still do to a
yeah,
degree. But I mean, the standards are. I don't low makes it sound bad because like again, any kid running anytime that's awesome for them. But if the standard is so open because they want to get as many kids in as possible, because again that's merch, that's entry fees, stuff like that. Um, it's like, man, I feel like you'd probably be better served by cutting it off, getting a full base season, and so you can have that strong cross country season.
yeah, and the thing with cross too, it's like I mean, with NXR and Foot Locker, obviously, like those have always kind of been not too far off. Like you can always kind of like it's like usually 2 or 3 weeks if you make it to nationals or even the regionals only maybe like 2 weeks. But then you have like running lane that goes in December, which is like oh like it's just I don't know, it's wild to me how much like especially for cross country runners that this sport has really turned to so long of a season, because it seems like it never stops. You take a break and then you go right into the next one. um I want to talk about Starlight Invite. um Obviously, like that's like one of the biggest meets in South Carolina. That's like huge expectations. We've had so many runners on the podcast and coaches that have literally said like Starlight is the one. Like the kids love it. They do their hair all crazy. They love running under the lights, all that jazz. That's some big shoes to fill, especially like first season. I guess first off, just to ask right away, like, do you think like not that you're not prepared for it, but I think anybody would be pretty overwhelmed to be like, "Holy crap! I'm about to host like one of the biggest meets of the season."
Yeah.
What kind of goes into that? Yeah, I'm assuming you got a pretty decent handoff from Coach Long about all that, and like, I guess have you ever hosted a huge meet like that, or like what is kind of some of your background in that?
Yeah, so I mean it is a big deal. When I interviewed for the job, athletic director, he asked me more questions about am I ready to do Starlight than honestly about like anything training related for sure. I did get a ton of really awesome resources from Coach Long. Like it's pretty well set up to be the turnkey, I guess how like you would describe like buying a new house, like, kind of plug and play. Like I think it will go smoothly. We're not planning on making any major changes at any point. I think this year I don't think we're gonna do the open race, that like community open race. Just because want to try to keep it a little bit more simple for my own sake. But we'll probably bring that back in future years. Um, but I mean, yeah, it's a lot. I mean, it's 42 teams split into 3 heats. It's stressful in my mind. Like I took my hook recipes there 2 years, and just like watching them all lined up in single file, you know, 14 wide across the track, and it's only one team, or like they're single file for every team. It's like, man, this is so crowded, but it's exciting. Yeah, I hosted some meets at Hillcrest. We did 3 or 4 meets a year, depending on the year. Now some of those were like JV meets that weren't didn't have a lot of teams that would have a lot of kids. Obviously, the JV meet usually is unlimited entry. Um, but like we did canned food drive, Fight Like White would be our big preseason meet where we would have like 14 or 15 teams. And again, doing it that many kids on the line at one time, it's really not so much about how many entries you have, it's how many kids are running at one time. So 14 teams, 7 kids a pop at once, that's not too bad. It's just that I have to do it 3 times over the night. And then obviously the JV races, which we have the boys split into 2 categories, then one for the girls. Um, so yeah, am I nervous about it? Yes, definitely. uh, but it will go well. It's going to be stressful for like 2 weeks leading up to it, and then it's going to go fine. And you know, we'll take notes and we'll make it better every year is the goal.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. Because I think a lot of people like, I guess we take for granted. I guess teams that like don't host races during the year, especially the student athletes, love them, but they probably do take it for granted of how much like work goes into hosting a meet, and especially like one that is as big as Starlight, and the expectations are so high there, and it's their favorite meet and whatnot. So no, it's just cool to kind of hear a little behind the scenes stuff like that because we were talking to Coach Young at Clover, and he built a course from scratch, and that was like
Yeah,
one of his goals to do. And so it's like picking his brain about that. It's just like there's so much that goes into hosting a meet, either whether you're building a course or continuing a legacy of such a high caliber meet. That's always really kind of really cool to see. Um, when I want to talk about a little bit about training now. Do you have any like I guess key workouts that you kind of think or kind of like signature to what you see going forward? Like, do you have a key workout that's like, hey, we're gonna do this workout. This is one of my favorite workouts. It always kind of either shows the kind of shape we're in or kind of turns the tide a bit. Do you have any kind of workouts like that?
honestly, I've got pretty bread and butter training to be honest, and obviously, yeah, I've done the same thing for 6 years now going on, and you fine tune, you refine things as you go from year to year. What worked here, what didn't. But in terms of like I don't have like a Coach Brandon's version of the Michigan that we run specifically or something. I try to keep it simple. I think a lot of coaches, especially younger coaches, they can kind of fall into the trap of like, I've got to do something really special and really complex to make it sound really cool or make it sound like it's this magical thing. The reality is there is no special workout. There's no magic workout. It's about stacking day after day after day of quality work. Sometimes you're just getting a base hit, and obviously we want to get doubles and triples and home runs, but it's about being on the field every day. Um, if I had to say a unique workout that I don't see a lot of other coaches that I know doing, I do have one called it's called the Monaghetti. It's named after this Australian coach from back in like the early 2000s, I think. I picked this up from a buddy of mine that ran at Western Colorado University, which is one of the most competitive Division II programs out there. Um, but basically, it's a time based fartlek where you do sets of there are variations of it, but like it might be 2 by 3 minutes at threshold, then we cut down to 4 by 90 seconds at 5K pace, then 4 by 60 at 2 mile pace, then 4 by 30 at mile pace, then 4 by 15 at like 800 pace, basically. So it's essentially a ladder, but they're such short repeats that it keeps the kids mentally engaged, and like you're always they're all 1-to-1 recovery in between, but it keeps them like engaged. Um, the most complicated part of it, honestly, is like kids that aren't paying attention to their watch. So I have to be out there with a really loud whistle to tell them like whether we're we're running fast or we're back on the recovery. I try to, if I do it on the track, I'll have them like in between sets turn around so not running on the same side the whole time just to mix it up. But I find the kids like that workout a lot. It goes by pretty quick. I mean, again, it's a set time. Like, you can't go over that time. Not like if I just gave them like, hey, we're going to do a 3 mile tempo run, and some kids are going to be back in 18 minutes, and some kids are going to be back in 30. I do early in the season. I definitely lean more towards time based stuff, partly for that reason, because early season you have a much wider disparity between kids. So logistically, I think it's easier to do time based stuff. But I hit the classics. I do threshold repeats, tempos, mile repeats, Ks, 800s. I'm a big fan of doing like the slightly off distance stuff. So like instead of doing 400 repeats, like I'll usually do 500s, just to mix it up a little bit, throw a different stimulus at them, keep them on their toes a little bit. Um, in terms of training philosophy, I veer more towards to get better at running, I have to run more or run faster. Both are correct answers. There's correct ways to do both. The biggest thing is, are you as a coach and are you as an athlete bought into what you're doing? Um, I lean towards quality over the quantity, especially at Riverside, just because wear and tear on the bottom, on the body, surfacing a lot of, especially at Hillcrest, and we were kind of in the same situation at Mercer because we were in the middle of the city, and there was not an abundance of, like, we don't have trails, we don't have a ton of grass to run on. So if you're going to be running a lot on asphalt and concrete, I think it's better long term for the body to increase that the wear and tear a little bit, running faster than increasing a lot by running an extra 1,000, 2,000 steps every day, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's honestly probably one of the first times I've ever heard 500-meter repeats, like switching it up like that. Because everyone's kind of really into that, 400s, eights, twos, and whatnot. Um, you know, from your time at Hillcrest to kind of seeing it obviously now, have you seen the growth of South Carolina running just expand? I mean, I really look at I look at even just the past, I mean, even the past year has been crazy. I thought this past track season was a huge staple point for South Carolina to really go on the map. But especially in the past like 4, 5, 6 years, how have you seen that growth just from the student athlete times just continuously getting better?
Yeah, I mean, it's insane catching up. I think the Southeast as a whole is progressing faster than anywhere else in the country. Because I mean, you look at like California, Washington, Oregon, Utah, Colorado, like those areas have always been high level, but there's only so much faster those kids are getting faster. I mean, you look at what like Jane Hendrickson in Utah did this past year, running faster than most collegians have ever run in a 5K. But I think the South is growing really fast. I mean, you look at guys like Ethan Strand from Birmingham, Alabama. Man, I mean, if you told somebody a decade ago, hey, just a regular high schooler from Birmingham is going to be a national title contender, is going to sign a pro contract with Nike, you would probably, well, first you would probably think, oh, I mean, like the 100 or the 200, right? But no, now it's distance kids everywhere. And I mean, the kids like Jake Liebert from Wando 2 years ago. I mean, he went to Raleigh Relays and ran like 14:06, I think it was. And I mean, that's a competitive college time. At like the like low end of Power Five, like that'll win you some conference meets even potentially. And I mean, now he was first team All Big 12s at their conference being the 10K. Like, that's impressive stuff. That's a kid from Charleston, and the speed that it's gotten better is crazy. Like my second year coaching, so this would have been spring of 2022. I had a kid, Elliot Dotson. He's at Anderson now, but he ran 4:16 and 9:18, and those put him, I want to say, like 11th and 12th all time in South Carolina at the time. And fast forward 4 years, and he's already dropped to like 25th, I think, on the all time list, and that is just like insane growth in such a short period of time. And it's cool, like anytime when I was at the college level, if I saw a South Carolina kid, especially if it was a kid from the upstate on any team, I was like, let's go, we're making an impact. And I mean, it's awesome to see the way the sport's growing. I think, somewhere out there in South Carolina, the the first guy to break 4 in the mile is probably on a team somewhere already. certainly hope he's on my team. But I mean, that's going to happen at some point. So, why not one of ours? Why not a kid that's watching this podcast right now? Um, and it's on both sides. I mean, the girl side as well. You look at what like Ava Lindsay is running. Like, I mean, that's the first time I ever saw her run. Was she was like seventh grade. I was like, that's either going to go really, really well. She's going to be incredible, or she's going to be like burnt out in like 2 years. And fortunately, it looks like she's on path to being, a nationally competitive runner. And that's so awesome. I think representation matters, and for kids to see, oh, okay, a kid from the same place as me is out there doing it. There's even like you see like the kids at Furman, like Carson Williams, Dylan Schubert, like those guys. They train 15 miles away from where my kids are training, and they're going and mixing it up with the best in the world at the highest level. Like that's awesome for kids to see.
Yeah, it's cool because yeah, like you look at like this year, like Caleb Burrows ran like 404 in the 16, like, and then comes back in the eight. I think he went 149 in the eight. Um, yeah, like
And
the
on the
growth is just,
javelin.
yeah, and then javelin, yeah, too, right? um, and then yeah, Ava obviously it, I think what really like caught my eye, and it's funny because I was telling my daughter this, because I'm from Florida originally, and so I always kind of look back at like Florida times and and I kind of compare, and like in the beginning of track season, I was like, man, like Florida girls, there's already like 10 of them that are sub 11. I was like, South Carolina, man, hopefully catch up and have a good year. And then before you know it, like All American uh track classic came around, and like it was just left and right girls breaking 11. It was like, holy crap, like it's so cool to see the growth of South Carolina running. And we actually talked to David Adams, who's the South Carolina record holder for 5K, and and speaking with him, I was like man, like it's cool because the expectation is like his record's going to be broken in a matter of a couple of years, man. Just the way the growth is coming in, and his record has stood for so long, and it's kind of shocking. Because I think it was like 14:37 off the top of my head, but I don't think we're far off. I think within a couple of years, easily. There's some guys right now, Chapel Martin.
Yeah.
Uh, he's at like he's low 15s right now. I wouldn't put it past him to do something this year, and it's cool. It's really cool to see for sure. I want to talk a little bit more to just on the coaching side of things, and when you, I think especially coming into a new year with a new team, and obviously you graduated Thai, and you spoke about kind of a rebuilding year in a way. When you're creating a schedule, like do you go back to the same schedule that was from last year, or do you have to almost switch it up a little bit because it is a little different of a team?
Um, I built my schedule independent of what's been done in the past. There is some overlap, but it's kind of just circumstantial. There's only so many really top level meets that work in South Carolina. But we're also not the schedule we have this year. To answer your question, I guess kind of it does not look the way it's going to look in next year or the year after that. When I think we're starting to get to like really like a team that I think I can take to NXR and be competitive. Like the schedule for that team is going to look different than this team in some ways. And in other ways, it won't because like there will still be the teams like a Fort Mill, for example, or JO Man, or like back when Riverside was really competitive a few years ago. Like those teams have 100, 150, even 200 kids on them. So like you have to have meets on your schedule that those kids can run. The kids that aren't making your travel squad. Um, I do think there's a lot of value in keeping some meets that are selective. Like I always have one, and maybe in future years I'll add a second one where it's like I'm only bringing eight, maybe eight kids to make the hotel rooms work or whatever. But I'm only bringing my varsity. Like I'm not bringing JV to this meet because I'm not gonna take kids. I'm big on not putting kids in a situation that I don't think they're ready for and they can't be competitive in. So I'm not going to take JV kids to go run at Wendy's. Uh, I don't see the point in it. And I also like to keep a level of like there's something to look forward to if you're a JV kid, something kind of a little bit of a carrot at the end of the stick for them to chase after. I think that's important. We are fortunate where there are getting to be more high level meets around this part of the country. I'm taking mine to Hare and Hound this year. the same McAlpine, same course as Wendy's, but I think it's a little more appropriate for where we're at. And I've worked with them 2 years at Hillcrest. I like the way they run the meet. But that's an awesome course that's going to be fast every year. In Georgia, there's ASICS as a pretty high level meet, so maybe in future years I take them there. Southern Showcase in Huntsville, same course as Running Lane. Maybe 1 year if I feel like, again, that one's tricky because it's so early in the season. And it's like, do I want to drive them 4 hours to a meet that's not really that much more competitive than just like eye opener, to be honest. So there's always logistics that go into it. How many kids am I bringing? How much is this going to cost? Fortunately, I'm in a place now, I think, with Riverside where resources aren't going to be that big of like a deciding factor. Um, but if I take a team somewhere, I want to be competitive, and like I'm not going to drive kids 4 hours to Southern Showcase if they can't even be put in like the fast heat. Like I'm not going to go somewhere and put them in the second heat because what's the point of that? We could have just stayed home. There's enough competition close by in the upstate, like good teams, that we don't really need that. But it is, you always want to put something that's exciting for the kids on the schedule. Like, oh, I know this is the overnight meet where we go do such and such, like some kind of tradition. So I hope that answered your question.
Oh yeah, no, and I'm kind of curious, just kind of a follow up onto that. When you look at like building a schedule, do you have like a number in mind as far as like how many races you kind of want your varsity to run? Because you already have to know, like, especially if you're state capable team there, like you're going to be running states and state quals and a regional meet. So there's three right there, and obviously you kind of dabble in something. Obviously you have Starlight. So there's four. Like, is there a limit to how you see, like, you don't want to run your guys too much, but you also want them to like have, I guess, the experience of running a lot of races. I don't know, like where's your number kind of lie on that?
So there's a number in my head, and it's not really the number that ends up working out practically. I'll say that. I do think in general, kind of going back to what we were talking about the summer races, I think high school kids today race a lot more than they need to, uh, especially, and some of that is kind of colored by my experience in college, where we only race every other weekend. So I
Yeah,
mean, you know, conference and regionals, and if you're fortunate and do well enough, nationals, like you'll only race like 7 times in a season. We'll run 7 times. If you're kind of like JV meets as well for some schools, like high school kids might run 7 times in a month, and it's just like I think that's too much. That's why by and large, I do not do like midweek JV meets. I think that's time that you could spend better doing a workout at home. I don't like putting kids in a race like say we do a JV meet in the middle of the week. I don't have good experience putting kids in like varsity guys that are saying, "Hey, just run this as a tempo. Like this is your workout for the day." Because like the adrenaline starts kicking up. It's a race. They've got the jersey on. It's
yeah,
hard for them to like rein it in, and that's a good thing. I don't really want to put the idea in them in their heads. Like I want them to feel that way when they put the jersey on. They feel like, "Oh no, I'm here to race." So telling them to be put in that situation and then hold back because it's tempo is a little counterintuitive sometimes, in my mind at least. I think I don't think we're there yet this year. We'll see. Like I said, it's a rebuilding year, and I'm learning a lot about the kids at the same time. But when the team gets where I want them to be, we'll probably have my top level varsity guys. I would like to only have them race like 6, maybe 8 times a year. So like I might put a B team in the varsity meet later on, but that's once the team gets to that level. Um, but it's hard because again, there's only so many high level meets to put them in. Like you said, they have to run state qualifier, region. I can't not put them in county, so that's 4 meets back to back to back to back. Um, which to touch on that, I mean, there are some things I would change about the way South Carolina runs cross country, like at an administrative level, um, to kind of help alleviate some of that. But like, again, I have to do Starlight. My kids would ride if I didn't put them in eye opener. like I really, when I look at my schedule, I only have over the course of like 16 weeks, I only have like 4 of them that there's any flexibility really for like what meet do I put them in. So like, some it depends on like, do I take them to, if I take them to Hare and Hound, that weekend's taken right before Starlight, so that's back to back. And it's like, okay, I can take them to Woodmont Invite because that's close. It's a good course. Chris Malzahn is a great guy. Um, but it starts to rack up quickly. And I do always try to put at least 2 weekends in the season where it's just completely off. Like we're not even gonna do an organized long run. Um, take that time, enjoy a weekend with your family. If y'all, this is the weekend that y'all can go to a Clemson game if you want to, uh, stuff like that. And like I need that as well as a coach. Like my wife and I just got married last October, so like our anniversary is right in the middle of cross country season. Like I want one weekend in there I can hang out with my wife and get a break from it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's important.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned it just adds up. It really does. The schedule just kind of adds up, and like you said, like I didn't even think about eye opener, and that's a huge one, and yeah. So you start talking about all these meets, and like it's crazy. But I mean, I agree with you though too. I think 6, 7, 8 meets a year is fine. I think you see some schedules, and they turn into just like every week of something, and like I mean, as a fan, I love it because I'm always out there, you know, with coverage. Um, but it just it makes you scratch your head sometimes too because it's like you're looking at a team that like has potential to run well at state, and it's like you almost. I mean, I guess you just gotta wait and see and see how it turns out. But it's not surprising how some of the kids get just kind of burnt out beforehand or whatnot. A couple more things I just want to kind of touch up on. One One is rankings. Do you look at rankings at all? Do you mention it? Are you gonna mention it to the team if you guys are ranked at a certain spot? Like, or is it kind of just taboo to even talk about rankings?
So that's a tough one. I don't want to be the kind of coach that looks at rankings, but when I'm on my planning period, at the end of the day, it's really hard not to. Just because I'm not just a coach, I'm also a fan of the sport. Like I want to see who's good, who's run what times. Um, I do not talk about it with kids, really, not very much. I did a lot of digging in the rankings for this preseason, which preseason is it's just shot in the dark a lot of times. I mean, kids are going to come out of nowhere that you've never heard of that are going to come be fast. Coaches change, stuff like that. Programs change, but I did a lot of digging for now just so I could know what I'm working with again since I was coaching from virtually basically for the first half of the summer. Like I needed to know all I could find out about these kids was what their PRs were. But I will maybe mention in this scenario, like I was talking to kids early on, like the guys team specifically, I was like, you know, you guys were 10th last year, and 10th is not what Riverside is striving for. Uh, and then you lost a guy that scored 1 point. So I talked about it then in the way to make the point, like, we've got a lot of work ahead of us. In future years, when we're where I know this program can get to, when we're consistently going to be ranked, top five, top three, top one in the state, I'm not going to talk about it because, again, like I just said, the rankings mean nothing at the end of the day. You've got to step on the line and you've got to race. The computer's not racing for you. Otherwise, like I don't know if you're a football guy, but like you look at like a couple years ago in the playoff and Florida State got cut, got axed, didn't make the playoff, and it's like if we're just going to look at what like the strength of schedule and the rankings say, then why are we even playing football games at all? You know what I mean? So it's the same here. It's like what the computer says online doesn't matter. Like we're going to step on the race and we're going to go out brave and we're going to let the chips fall. I don't care what the numbers say.
Yeah, I always find it interesting because I think, especially with like social media nowadays, and everybody has a computer in their pocket now. It's hard not to see it. Um, but then you look at it too, and like I don't know, maybe it could give you motivation because you see a ranking that's not in your favor or something. But because I remember always looking at rankings in high school and always being
Same.
like there's just yeah, it's hard not to do it, but I'm always curious of just like if you talk about it, especially with coaches. Like, do coaches talk about it? Because I don't think my coach ever really talked too much about it at all. But we always kind of brought it up at practice, and we would be sitting around a table and do you see where they have us this week? Um,
Yeah. In track
yeah,
season, I'll maybe talk about it a little bit more on like the individual side because there's only so many spots, so kind of keep a track of like when we go to the region meet, like hey, Jackson, these are the guys that you got to beat if you want to make it to the next round of the state playoff. And cross country on the, especially since it is more team oriented, it's not something I have in the past or plan to really talk about kids much in the future. Like I just read a book over the summer by Matt Baxter, who was part of like the first Northern Arizona dynasty.
Mhm.
And one of the things he hammered on a lot in there is like if you look at the national media, other teams, social media, and then you look at us, like within our team, we're all talking about the same thing, which is just NAU. We're not talking about anybody else. Everybody else is talking about us, and we're only talking about us. And I think that is the best mindset to have. Because at the end of the day, you can't control. I could do my best work as a coach possible. I could have, studs on the roster, but I can't control when we step the line. Like I can't control who Fort Mill has on their roster. I can't control the race they run. All we can control is the race that we run. So that's what we focus on.
Yeah, and like you said, like preseason rankings, especially too. It's like there's so many people that are going to come up this year that we've never heard. Um, I was talking to a guy at May River, and he said they have a guy coming in from Japan, and apparently he's a stud. So it's like, I mean, you just never know. You never know. My junior year of cross country, the team that we expected to be the top seven, it was like four of them were completely new to the sport, and they just came in and they took those spots right away. And it was like we have a completely new, different team, and it was better, but completely different from what originally we thought it was going to look like heading in. Uh, you know, I guess kind of the last thing I really want to touch up on is, and I know you mentioned rebuild, and I know you mentioned just, the philosophy and how everything is, but with this team right now, as it stands, and I know it's still early, and even when we get into August, it's still early. Um, but what are some of those current team like expectations for the year? Like, what are you kind of shooting for?
So this is the only time I'll talk about it. If you look at the computers, they would put both the guys and the girls at around like the 8 to 10 range. From what I've already seen, a month in to summer, I think we'll beat that. What I care about more than a number though, or a time or a place, is like I want my team to step to the line. I want them to be competitive, and I want them to believe themselves internally that no matter who else is on the line, they're going out there to compete, and that we're trying to win every meet that we're in. Um, I'm not going to put them on the line and say, hey guys, I think you know third, fourth place, like that'd be a good day for us. Like I know what the numbers say, and I know the reality. I understand that of the sport, but like the mindset that we're going to when that gun goes off is we're here to compete. We're here to win, because that's what it takes to be competitive at the high level. And I mean, winning is hard, man. And in every sport at every level, winning is freaking hard. But boy, it's a good feeling. And I'm trying to get more of that. I'm trying to get these kids to experience that for themselves. So I mean, look for us at the county meet. Look for us at the state championship to be up there mixing up at the front of the race. And if we go out hard and it falls apart at the end, I'm okay with that as a coach. But I want my kids to go out there and race with some dog in them, as the kids might say. I want them to go out there and be competitive from the gun and let the chips fall from there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure. We were talking to a kid. The podcast just dropped today. Actually, John Templeton. He he mentioned going into the state meet over at Wake Med in North Carolina. The kid's PR was like 40 or 40. It was 20 seconds ahead of him. Number one guy was ranked 1440, and he was ranked like 1503 time range. And goes into that race and similar. He's like, I can't go into it thinking I'm gonna get second place, even though this guy's a stud. Like, I'm here to win. I'm here to give it everything, and he ends up winning the whole race and doing the upset. And it's like you go into a mindset like you go into a race with that mindset, and uh, you know, hey, anything can happen. That's the beautiful thing about the sport is like we mentioned, like rankings don't mean anything really. Once you step on that line, it's anybody's day. It really is. So
Yeah, I
definitely look.
think
Yep. No, yeah,
yeah,
go.
it's only an upset to the people on the sidelines. You know what I mean? The people that are doing the upsetting, they know they've put the work in. They've built the confidence from a summer of hard work, from grinding out those workouts. Um, is a surprise. maybe. And I mean, that's one of the best things about coaching me is when you see a kid do something that they didn't think they can do, but the work has been put there. That upset doesn't happen in the race; it happens over the course of the 6 months leading up to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Coach, hey, again, thanks for coming on. I definitely would invite you to come back on during the season. I know it's a lot, it's really busy, and I know you got a lot going on. So, but I truly appreciate you coming on. And, um, again, I wish you the best of luck. I know everybody in South Carolina is wishing you luck. Probably not too much luck because I want to beat you, but wishing you the best of luck, especially with a great legacy at Riverside and everything, and what you bring to the table. I'm sure is gonna continue to put Riverside on the map and bring it back to some pretty good glory days. So thanks again, Coach. I appreciate it greatly.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk maybe after Starlight. Let's get that out of the way first. But yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate what you're doing, shining the spotlight on the work of the coaches and the kids in these two states. It's awesome stuff.
Thanks, Coach.